Hi everyone, I'm Keith Mathis, and so welcome to another 7 Minutes to PMP Mastery. Today we're going to be talking about the PMP exam test changes that are happening in July of 2026. So why does it matter that the PMP test will change? I've had that asked to me many times from people when they're calling in asking about information. The main reason is that the devil you know about the current test is better than the devil you don't know. You know more about the current test. You know what people have a tendency to experience on the current test. When a new test comes out, it takes a little while for you to start realizing what are some of the emphasis areas that might be a little bit different than previous testing areas. So the specific changes are tested consistently after the certification change, and so PMI does have a tendency to ask a lot of those specific changes on the new test. They're wanting to see, do you understand the new way that they're doing it, the new emphasis that they're doing it. Certification will adjust with minor tweaks for a few times after the test initially changes. Sometimes people are shocked to hear that, but your exam content outline and objectives might not change, but they'll tweak how they ask something or they'll tweak how they say something. Also, there's less known about future tests than the current test. A good example of this was all the way back into 2021. When that test changed, it still went through 2 or 3 additional tweaks that changed how the test was presented, changed emphasis on some of the content. And I'll talk about that in just a moment here. So those previous changes I'm referring to will emphasize a lot of different things. For example, when they have a new change on the test, it's not uncommon for the terms to be tweaked a little bit. The actual definitions or the glossary areas have been updated a little bit. There might be a little different emphasis between words, and sometimes they'll flip-flop a little bit between some of the wording, the way it was previously on the previous test and what it is now. And you'll notice that they'll start asking about that. The other thing in 2021 that changed a little bit is when they made the change in 2021, you still had typical calculations. Most of us went through all the calculations. So if you went to take the PMP test before, you would go in and you'd get a calculator and you'd have to calculate earned value and expected monetary value and present value and so forth. But today, that's not the case. The way the current test is right now, the PMP exam, you do not calculate all of these things. And so there are no calculations. Now, we'll see what happens in July of 2026, but there's no calculations right now. No earned value, no expected monetary value calculations, no present value calculations, no root cause calculation. You do have to interpret these, though. So it's not like those aren't on the test. They're there, but they're asking you to interpret this. So if you're looking at schedule variance or schedule variance, if you're looking at cost variance, they'll ask you something about the project based on what that data is telling you. So you do have to interpret it, but you don't have to calculate it. Right now, the only thing that's being calculated is the PERT, and that's a very simplistic kind of calculation, but that's the only calculation that has been going on for probably a year and a half. So one of the things that helps you in going to a boot camp that's provided by an ATP is the material that you have for your PMP test is coming directly from PMI, and so it's going to align with that current test. So it's very important to do that. All right, so the other thing about tests changing that many people still have not gotten, we get questions about this, PMBOK. PMBOK 8 is coming out, and so people are thinking, well, it's going to change the test. Well, they're not changing the test because of PMBOK 8. They're changing the test, but PMBOK 8 is coming out. And so PMBOK is not the main text used and hasn't been since probably 2018. When I did 2006, when I got my PMP, PMBOK was the main driver. Maybe that's the case with you. We had to do all the inputs, outputs tools. Oh my goodness, poke me in the eye. That was horrible, wasn't it? Those were difficult. However, since 2018, the PMP certification started using multiple text. And then when PMBOK 7 came out, PMBOK 7 switched from a process view to a system view. And then as PMBOK 8 comes out, you're seeing that reinforced even more. But the PMBOK is, even though it might be a resource, it's not the resource. So going to a boot camp that's emphasizing all the current PMBOK is not the way to go, because people are failing those tests because that's not the emphasis. Books such as Agile Standard is one of the texts that they'll use, PMO Standard, all of those are in the current test. And so the material that comes from PMI, you'll see where they've quoted some of these other texts and have brought them in. And so no one knows for sure what changes will be, what the changes will be for the current PMP test for in 2026, or how PMI is going to adjust the exam. But what we do know is that PMBOK is not the main driver there. So, do you need a private PMP exam certification course? So, a lot of times when people are looking at this, they'll say, well, I want a private course. So, let me give you some details about a private course. We do private courses, we do them virtually and both on site, face to face, or virtually, but we do it. And so, what happens with that course is that you get it booked, your people sign in if we're doing it virtually or face to face. Everyone gets a copy of the new material from PMI that only ATPs can purchase, and so the entire boot camp is only for your organization. But in order to do this, you need 10 people. We can handle up to 50 people, but you've got to have at least 10 in order to do this. And so the private course can be virtual, on-site. If you do an on-site, there will be additional travel expense, obviously. But the price, we give you our lowest price, which is $15.50 per person. Now, if you look at our pricing on our website, you'll see that the boot camps go all the way up to, I think it's 28.50 for per person for people to attend. But this, we give you a good cut rate on this so that we can get on site or we can do a virtual with your people and get them through it. Now, just to remind you, the client's going to pay for the first PMP test. So every person's going to have to take the test, and you're picking up the tab if you're the client. We will pay for the second and third. So that $15.50, we're giving you our guarantee. And so we'll pay for the second and third test if needed. So that's what we're talking about with a private class. Now, one more thing about this, just for you to keep in mind. So let's say we do a private class for you, and let's say you put 15 people in and we do it, everybody goes through. But this time next year, you get 3 new hires, and you think, you know what, these folks need a PMP. What am I going to do? I don't have enough for another on-site class. Your people will be able to filter into a public class that we do where people are in from all over the world. They'll filter into that class and they will take the test, but they'll take it for the same discounted price, because once you have become our client and you have already done a public seminar, all your future people will come for those discounted pricing, and Wanda will set all of that up for you at that time. So let's talk about the virtual PMP exam prep boot camps. We still have some for April, June, August, August, October, and December. We do it every other month, and so this is our open public class. People come to this from all over the world. And then let me just remind you one other thing. 50% of the PMP test is now on Agile and 50% is on Waterfall. And so that surprises people a lot of times. They still have their Agile certifications at PMI, but this is one of the big emphasis. And if you're in a project manager, you know what I'm talking about. You're having to look and see whether we're going to do it Agile or whether we're doing it Waterfall or hybrid. You're having to do all of those. Many people have called in about the pricing for taking the test. So let me give it to you one more time. I know I did it in another video, so I apologize. But just to make sure you got this, the new pricing for 2026 is non-members will pay $675 if they are non-member to take the PMP test the first time. If you're a member of PMI, you will pay $425. And the PMI membership that allows you to get the $425 is $164 per person. So those were correct amounts. That is the new pricing for 2026 for taking the test. So let me close out with a little bit of additional information for you. Here's our 800 number, and you know that we are themathisgroup.com, not just Mathis Group. And here's my email address. And so if you have some questions and you want to email me, I'll be glad to contact you and correspond with you and answer some of the questions. Or you can call the 800 number and leave a message, and Wanda will get you in the loop for whatever you're wanting to do. Thank you so much as you watch the video. I hope this has helped answer some of your questions about private classes and some of the changes for 2026. And so if I can help you in any way, let me know. Okay. Bye now. Have a great day. See ya.